The Yongzheng Emperor, born Yingzhen, was the fifth emperor of the Manchu-led Qing dynasty and the third Qing emperor to rule over China proper. He reigned from 1723 to 1735. A hard-working ruler, the Yongzheng Emperor's main goal was to create an effective government at minimal expense. Like his father, the Kangxi Emperor, the Yongzheng Emperor used military force to preserve the dynasty's position. His reign was known for being despotic, efficient, and vigorous. Although the Yongzheng Emperor's reign was much shorter than that of both his father and his son, the Yongzheng era was a period of peace and prosperity. The Yongzheng Emperor cracked down on corruption and reformed the financial administration. His reign saw the formulation of the Grand Council, an institution which had an enormous impact on the future of the Qing dynasty. Birth and early life. Yingzhen was the 11th son but the 4th prince of the Kangxi Emperor to survive into adulthood. His mother, who is historically known as Empress Shaogongren, was originally a court attendant from the Manchu-led clan. Around the time when Yingzhen was born, his mother was of a low status and did not have the right to raise her own children. For most of his childhood, Yingzhen was raised by noble consort Tong, the daughter of Tong Guowei, the Kangxi Emperor's maternal uncle and an eminent official in the early part of the Kangxi Emperor's reign. She died when Yingzhen was just 9 years old. After the birth of more children, Yingzhen's mother was promoted to a pin and then to a fian, and became known as Defei or virtuous consort. Quote, however, Defei refused to raise her first son at the time. Therefore, Kangxi Emperor raised Yingzhen by himself in short period. The Kangxi Emperor did not raise his children inside the palace alone. He exposed his sons to the outside world and gave them a rigorous education. Yingzhen accompanied his father on several inspection trips around the Beijing area, as well as one further south. He became the honorary leader of the Plain Red Banner during the Battle of Jiamodo between the Qing Empire and the Mongol Dzunga Khanate led by Guldan Khan. Yingzhen was made a Baal in 1689 and promoted to Zhanwang in 1698. In 1709, the Kangxi Emperor stripped his second son Yinzhen of his position as crown prince. Yinzhen had been the crown prince for his whole life. His removal left the position of heir open to competition among the emperor's remaining sons. In the same year, the Kangxi Emperor promoted Yingzhen from Zhanwang to Qinhuang under the title Prince Yong of the first rank. Yingzhen maintained a low profile during the initial stages of the succession struggle. To appoint a new heir, the Kangxi Emperor decreed that officials in his imperial court would nominate a new crown prince. The Kangxi Emperor's 8th son, Yinzhen, was the candidate preferred by the majority of the court as well as many of the Kangxi Emperor's other sons. The Kangxi Emperor, however, opted not to appoint Yinzhen as his heir apparent, largely due to apprehension that Yinzhen's political clout at court was beginning to overshadow that of himself. Thereafter, Yingzhen sensed that his father was in favor of reinstating Yinzhen as heir apparent. Thus he supported Yinzhen and earned the trust of his father. Disputed succession. In 1712, the Kangxi Emperor deposed Yinzhen again, and chose not to designate an heir apparent for the remaining years of his reign. This resulted in stiff competition among his sons for the position of crown prince. Those considered frontrunners were Yingzhen, Yinzhen, and Yinti. Of these, Yinzhen received the most support from the mandarins, but not from his father. Yingzhen had supported Yinzhen as heir, and did not build a large political base for himself until the final years of the Kangxi Emperor's reign. Unlike Yinzhen's high-profile cultivation of a partisan base of support, Yingzhen did stay largely away from the limelight. highlight. When the Kangxi Emperor died in December 1722, the field of contenders shrank to 3 princes after Yinzhen pledged his support to the 14th prince, Yinti. At the time of the Kangxi Emperor's death, Yinti, who held the appointment of Border Pacification General-in-Chief, was leading a military campaign in northwestern China. Some historians believe that Yinti's appointment implied that the Kangxi Emperor favored Yinti and was grooming him for succession by sending him on a campaign to train him in military affairs. Others, however, maintain that the Kangxi Emperor intended to keep Yinti away from the capital to ensure a peaceful succession for Yingzhen. It was Yingzhen who nominated Yinti for the post, not Yinzhen, with whom Yinti was closely affiliated. Official court records state that on the 20th of December 1722 the ailing Kangxi Emperor called 7 of his sons and the general commandant of the Beijing Gendarmerie, Long Kodo, to his bedside. Long Kodo read the will and declared that Yingzhen would be the Kangxi Emperor's successor. Some evidence has suggested that Yingzhen contacted Long Kodo months before the will was read in preparation for his succession through military means. Although in their official capacities frequent encounters were expected, there is a widely circulated legend that Yingzhen modified the Kangxi Emperor's will by changing key Chinese characters specifying the heir to the throne. The best-known rumor was that Yingzhen modified the phrase "transfer the throne to the 14th prince" to "transfer the throne to the 4th prince" by changing the character "shi" to "yu." Others say it was modifying 14 to 4th. Historians remain divided on whether or not Yingzhen usurped the throne, even though the scholar Feng Ergang believed that Yingzhen's succession was legitimate. Some events have been cited by historians as supporting the legitimate succession theory. For example, in January 1721, when the Kangxi Emperor celebrated the 60th anniversary of his enthronement, he sent Yingzhen, Yintao and Hongshen to oversee the veneration ritual at the imperial tombs. None of the princes who supported Yinti was sent to attend the ritual. In 2013, an exhibit in Liaoning's Archive Bureau unveiled the Kangxi Emperor's succession will for the first time, and the exhibit finally disproved any notion that Yingzhen changed his father's will. Yingzhen chose an era name similar to his given name. 1723 was to be the first year of the Yongzheng era. For his first official act as emperor, Yingzhen released his longtime ally, the 13th Prince Yinxiang, who had been imprisoned by the Kangxi Emperor around the same time as the deposed crown prince, Yinreng. Some sources indicate that Yinxiang, the most militant of the princes, then assembled a group of special soldiers from the Fengtai command to seize immediate control of the Forbidden City and surrounding areas to prevent usurpation by Yinzi's subordinates. Yingzhen's personal account stated that he was emotionally unstable and deeply saddened over his father's death, and knew it would be a burden much too heavy for himself if he were to succeed the throne. In addition, after the will was read, Yingzhen wrote that the officials Zhang Tingyu and Long Kodo, along with the princes Yingzhi and Yingzhi, led the other princes in the ceremonial 3 kneels and 9 salutes to the deceased emperor. The following day, Yingzhen issued an edict summoning Yinti back from Qinghai, bestowing on the mother the title Holy Mother Empress Dowager. The day Yinti arrived at the funeral. In the first major comprehensive biography of the Yongzheng Emperor by Feng Ergang, the author puts the succession in perspective. Feng writes that there were some suspicious signs from the lost wills and the dates released, but the majority of evidence points to Yingzhen succeeding the throne legitimately. Yinzi, the 8th prince, had been bribing officials for support throughout his life, and his influence penetrated the Fengtai command. Furthermore, Feng suggests that, although we are not yet altogether certain on what happened with the succession, and which side is correct, It is reasonable to think that Yingzhen's political rivals manipulated all suspicion behind the will in an attempt to put a dark image on the emperor. Imperial Chinese tradition had led certain schools of thought in believing that the Yongzheng Emperor's whole reign can be discredited, simply because his succession of the throne did not come as a will of his father, the emperor, an ultimate decision-maker in China. Quote, he further suggests that the Kangxi Emperor made a grave mistake by allowing his sons to become major political players, and a bloody battle of succession was the inevitable result of imperial Chinese institutions. Therefore, it would be an even bigger mistake to judge a ruler solely on the way he came to power. Certainly, the Yongzheng Emperor ensured his successor would have a smooth transition when the time came. Reign. After ascending the throne in December 1722, Yingzhen adopted the era name Yongzheng in 1723 from his peerage title Yong and Zheng. It has been suggested that the second character of his era name was an attempt to cover up his illegal claim to the throne by calling himself justified. Immediately after succeeding to the throne, the Yongzheng Emperor chose his new governing council. It consisted of the 8th Prince Yinzi, 13th Prince Yinxiang, Zhang Tingyu, Ma Qi, and Longkodo. Yinzi was given the title Prince Lian, while Yinxiang was given the title Prince Yi, and these two held the highest positions in the land. Continued battle against princes. The nature of his succession remained a subject of controversy and overshadowed the Yongzheng Emperor's reign, as many of his surviving brothers did not see his succession as legitimate. The Yongzheng Emperor became increasingly paranoid that they would plot to overthrow him. The earlier players in the battle for succession, Yingzhen the eldest, and Yinreng, the former crown prince, continued to live under house arrest. Yinreng died 2 years after the Yongzheng Emperor's reign began. The Yongzheng Emperor continued to perceive Yinzi and his party, consisting of the princes Yintang, Yinti, and their associates, as his greatest political challenge in the early years of his reign. To diffuse the political cloud, the Yongzheng Emperor undertook a divide-and-conquer strategy. Immediately after ascending the throne, the emperor bestowed on Yinzi the title Prince Lian, nominally of the highest noble rank. Yinzi was also then appointed as the Minister of the Life Yuan and the top-ranking member of the Imperial Council assisting the Yongzheng Emperor. Some historians believe his position at the time was essentially that of a chancellor or prime minister, by ostensibly elevating Yinzi to a more prominent political role. The Yongzheng Emperor held Yinzi under close watch and kept him busy with affairs of state, reducing the chance of him conducting behind-the-scenes political maneuvers. Yinzi's allies received notably different treatment. Yintang was sent to Qinghai under the pretext of military service, but in reality was watched over by the Yongzheng Emperor's trusted protege, Nian Ganglao. Yin, the 10th prince, was told to leave the capital to send off a departing Mongol prince, but since he refused to complete this trip as the emperor commanded, the Yongzheng Emperor stripped him of all his titles in May 1724 and sent him north to Shunyi to languish in solitude. The 14th prince, Yinti, born to the same mother as the Yongzheng Emperor, was recalled to Beijing from his military post. The emperor selected Nian Ganglao to replace Yinti as the commander of the Northwestern Expeditionary Force. Yinti, who were expected to be placed on the throne himself, was reluctant to recognize the Yongzheng Emperor's succession as legitimate. Yinti was accused of violating imperial decorum at the funeral proceedings of the late emperor, and placed under house arrest by the Yongzheng Emperor at the imperial tombs in western Beijing. Historians believe that the mother, Empress Dowager Renshao, favored Yinti partly because she raised him herself, while she did not raise the Yongzheng Emperor. Nonetheless, the increasingly sharp conflict between between her two surviving sons caused the mother great sorrow. She died less than 6 months after the Kangxi Emperor, by forcibly dispatching Yinzhen's party to separate locations geographically. The Yongzheng Emperor made it extremely inconvenient for his rivals to link up and conspire against him. While some of Yinzhen's subordinates were appointed to high office, others were demoted or banished, making it difficult for Yinzhen's party to maintain the same set of partisan interests. The Yongzheng Emperor publicly reprimanded Yinzhen in 1724 for mishandling an assignment, eventually removing him from office and then sending him into house arrest. Yinzhen was forced to rename himself Hasina, a derogatory slur in the Manchu language. The emperor also confiscated the assets of Yintang and Yin. Relationship with the West. In 1724, the Yongzheng Emperor issued a decree prescribing Catholicism. This was followed by the persecution of Chinese Christians that steadily increased during the reign of the Yongzheng Emperor's son, the Qianlong Emperor, descendants of the Ming dynasty's imperial family. In 1725, the Yongzheng Emperor bestowed a hereditary marquis title on Zhou Jilian, a descendant of the imperial family of the Ming dynasty. Zhou was also paid by the Qing government to perform rituals at the Ming tombs and induct the Chinese plain white banner into the 8 banners. Later in 1750, during the reign of the Yongzheng Emperor's successor, the Qianlong Emperor, Zhou Jiliang was posthumously honored as Marquis of Extended Grace. The Marquis title was passed on to Zhou's descendants for 12 generations until the end of the Qing dynasty in the early 20th century. Nian Gengnao and Longkodo. Nian Gengnao was a supporter of the Yongzheng Emperor long before the latter ascended the throne. In 1722, when he was recalling his brother Yinti from the northwest border in Xinjiang, the Yongzheng Emperor appointed Nian as the commander of the Qing army in Xinjiang. The situation in Xinjiang at the time was volatile, and a strong general was needed in the area. After several military conquests, however, Nian's stature and power grew. Some said he began seeing himself as equal to the emperor, seeing Nian as no longer within his control. The Yongzheng Emperor issued an imperial edict demoting Nian to the position of a general of the Hangzhou command. His Nian continued to remain unrepentant. He was eventually given an ultimatum and forced to commit suicide by consuming poison in 1726. Long Kodo was the commander of the militias stationed at the capital at the time of the Yongzheng Emperor's succession. He fell in disgrace in 1728 and died while under house arrest. After taking the throne, the Yongzheng Emperor suppressed writings he deemed unfavorable to his court, particularly those with an anti-Manchu bias. Foremost among these were those of Zheng Jing, an unsuccessful degree candidate heavily influenced by the 17th-century scholar Liu Liang. Zheng had been so affected by what he read that he attempted to incite the Governor-General of Shaanxi Sichuan, Yu Zhongqi, to rebel against the Qing government. Yu Zhongqi promptly turned him in, and in 1730 news of the case reached the Yongzheng Emperor. Highly concerned with the implications of the case, the emperor had Zheng Jing brought to Beijing for trial. The emperor's verdict seemed to demonstrate a Confucian sovereign's benevolence. He ascribed Zheng's actions to the gullibility and naivete of a youth taken in by Liu Liang's abusive and overdrawn rhetoric. In addition, the emperor suggested that Liu Liang's original attack on the Manchus was misplaced, since they had been transformed by the long-term exposure to the civilizing force of Confucianism. The Yongzheng Emperor Emperor is also known for establishing a strict autocratic-style rule during his reign. He detested corruption and punished officials severely when they were found guilty of an offense. In 1729, he issued an edict prohibiting the smoking of madak, a blend of tobacco and opium. The Yongzheng Emperor's reign saw the Qing dynasty further establish itself as a powerful empire in Asia. He was instrumental in extending what became known as a Kangxi period of harmony. In response to the tragedy of the succession struggle during his father's reign, the Yongzheng Emperor created a sophisticated procedure for choosing a successor. He was known for his trust in Mandarin officials. Li Wei and Tian Wenjing governed China's southern areas with the assistance of Ortai. Expansion in the northwest. Like his father, the Yongzheng Emperor used military force in order to preserve the Qing Empire's position in Outer Mongolia. When Tibet was torn by civil war in 1727 to 1728, he intervened. After withdrawing, he left a Qing citizen and a military garrison to safeguard the dynasty's interests. For the Tibetan Campaign, the Yongzheng Emperor sent an army of 230,000 led by Yinzhen against the Dzungas and their army of 80,000. Due to geography, the Qing army was at first unable to engage the more mobile enemy. Eventually, they engaged the Dzungas and defeated them. This campaign cost the treasury at least 8 million silver taels. Later in the Yongzheng Emperor's reign, he sent a small army of 10,000 to fight the Dzungas again. However, that army was annihilated and the Qing Empire faced the danger of losing control of Mongolia. A Kaka ally of the Qing Empire would later defeat the Dzungas. Following the reforms of 1729, the treasury's income increased from 32,622,421 taels in 1721 to about 60 million taels in 1730. Surpassing the record set during the Kangxi Emperor's reign, but the pacification of the Qinghai area and the defensive border areas were heavy burdens on the treasury. Safeguarding the country's borders cost 100,000 taels per year. The total military budget came up to about 10 million taels a year. By the end of 1735, military spending had depleted half the treasury, leaving 33.95 million taels. It was because of the cost of war that the Yongzheng Emperor considered making peace with the Dzungas. Identification of Qing with China. Since the Kangxi Emperor's time, the Qing emperors had identified China and the Qing Empire as the same, and in treaties and diplomatic papers the Qing Empire called itself China. During the Kangxi and Yongzheng Emperors' reigns, China was used as the name of the Qing Empire in official Manchu language documents, identifying the Qing Empire in China as the same entity, with Dulimbai Gurun appearing in 160 official diplomatic papers between the Qing Empire and the Russian Empire. The term China was redefined by the Qing emperors to be a multi-ethnic entity which included non-Han Chinese ethnic groups and the territories. China and Qing were noticeably and increasingly acquainted with each other during the Qianlong Emperor's reign, with the Qianlong Emperor and the Qing government writing poems and documents using both the Chinese name Zhongguo and the Manchu name Dulimbai Gurun. Compared to the reigns of previous Qing emperors such as the Yongzheng and Kangxi emperors, the use of China to refer to the Qing Empire appears most during the Qianlong Emperor's reign. According to scholars who examined documents on Sino-Russian relations, religion, the Yongzheng Emperor was firmly against Christian converts among the Manchus. He warned them that the Manchus must follow only the Manchu way of worshipping heaven since different peoples worshipped heaven differently. The Yongzheng Emperor stated, "The Lord of Heaven is heaven itself." In the empire we have a temple for honoring heaven and sacrificing to him. We Mancos have Tio Chin. The first day of every year we burn incense and paper to honor heaven. We Mancos have our own particular rites for honoring heaven. The Mongols, Chinese, Russians, and Europeans also have their own particular rites for honoring heaven. I have never said that he could not honor heaven, but that everyone has his way of doing it. As a Manchu person should do it like us. Death and succession. The Yongzheng Emperor ruled the Qing Empire for 13 years before dying suddenly in 1735 at the age of 56. Legend holds that he was assassinated by Lu Xiniang, a daughter or granddaughter of Lu Liang, whose family was executed for literary crimes against the Qing government. Another theory was that Lu Xiniang was the Yongzheng Emperor's lover and the real mother of the Qianlong Emperor, but he refused to let her become the empress. It is generally accepted that he died while reading court documents. It is likely that his death was the result of an overdose of the medication he was consuming, which he believed would prolong his life, to prevent the succession tragedy which he himself had faced. The Yongzheng Emperor was said to have ordered his third son Kangxi to commit suicide. He also devised a system for his successors to choose their heirs in secret. He wrote his chosen successor's name on 2 scrolls, placed one scroll in a sealed box and had the box stored behind the stele in the Qianqing palace. He kept the other copy with him or hid it. After his death, the officials would compare the scroll in the box with the copy he had kept. If they were deemed identical, the person whose name was on the paper would be the new emperor. The Yongzheng Emperor was interred in the Western Qing tombs 120 kilometers southwest of Beijing, in the Tailing Mausoleum complex. His fourth son Hongli, then still known as Prince Bao, succeeded him as the Qianlong Emperor. The Qianlong Emperor was regarded as one of the greatest emperors of the Qing dynasty, with a historical stature comparable to that of his grandfather, the Kangxi Emperor. The Qianlong Emperor rehabilitated many figures who had been purged during his father's reign, including restoring honors to many of his uncles who were formerly his father's rivals in the succession struggle. Family. The Yongzheng Emperor had 14 children with his primary wife and consorts. Of these children, only 5, Hongxi, Hongli, Hongzhao, Hongyin, and a Princess Wike, were known to have survived into adulthood. Father, Kangxi Emperor. Mother, concubine from the Manchu-led clan, who became known as Empress Dowager Renshao when her son became the emperor. She is posthumously known as Empress Shaogongren. Spouses, empresses, imperial noble consorts, and imperial concubines, noble ladies, first-class female attendants, second-class female attendants, and others, sons, daughters, adopted daughters, ancestry.